a job creation scheme for the incompetent, work-shy and unemployable. British county and borough councils, job creation schemes for the unemployable, work-shy and incompetent. A critical examination and proposed solutions. Introduction. Across the United Kingdom, the perception of local government, particularly county and borough councils, has been steadily deteriorating. Critics often argue that these institutions have drifted far from their original purpose of serving communities, instead becoming bloated bureaucracies filled with those considered unemployable, work-shy, or incompetent. This caustic indictment may seem hyperbolic to some, but to many members of the public who rely on efficient and responsive services, it resonates with painful familiarity. From underperforming planning departments to laughably inefficient procurement schemes, there is an emerging consensus that local government, in many areas, is broken. The decline of local governance has been gradual but unmistakable. Once heralded as the bedrock of British democracy, local authorities are now frequently seen as disconnected, unresponsive, and administratively paralysed. Service users often encounter layers of obfuscation rather than assistance, and the taxpayer is left questioning where their money is going. The deterioration in public confidence is not only a matter of perception but increasingly of lived experience. This essay investigates the validity of such accusations, explores the structural and cultural factors that may have contributed to the problem, and ultimately proposes a set of practical reforms aimed at restoring integrity, efficiency, and public trust in local governance. The bloated bureaucracy, an overview of the problem. Local government in the UK is responsible for a vast range of services: education, social care, road maintenance, refuse collection, public housing, planning and development, libraries, and more. These functions are funded through a combination of central government grants, council tax, and business rates. The overall spending power of councils remains substantial, with billions of pounds annually channeled into local governance. Despite this extensive remit and considerable budgetary allocation, councils have become synonymous with inefficiency and bureaucracy. Critics allege that local authorities now act more like employment shelters for individuals who would struggle to succeed in the private sector. Anecdotal accounts, freedom of information, FOI, responses, and media exposes frequently reveal councils employing layers of managerial staff, each earning inflated salaries, delivering unclear outputs, and presiding over departments that are either failing or redundant. This reality is especially galling when juxtaposed with decaying services. Roads remain riddled with potholes, bin collections are frequently delayed, libraries are closing, and planning departments exhibit glacial responsiveness. In many areas, the ratio of administrators to frontline workers is absurdly skewed. A common perception is that councils are top-heavy with officers who specialize in diversity awareness, strategic community visioning, or carbon neutrality road mapping, while frontline workers, those who clean streets, maintain parks or respond to housing complaints, remain underfunded and undersupported. Such inefficiencies are not merely cosmetic. They have real-world consequences. Vulnerable residents are left without support, new housing developments are delayed, infrastructure crumbles, and local economies stagnate. The bureaucratic sprawl serves no one except those it employs. Recruitment practices and the question of meritocracy. A fundamental cause of incompetence within councils lies in their recruitment practices. In many cases, positions are filled not on merit, but on the basis of internal familiarity, box-ticking compliance with equality and diversity metrics, or vague competence-based frameworks that fail to distinguish excellence from mediocrity. Many council jobs are never openly advertised in a meaningful sense. Roles are instead earmarked for internal promotion or candidates drawn from a narrow pool of public sector professionals who merely rotate between local authorities. This leads to an echo chamber of shared bad practices, where innovation is stifled and accountability becomes increasingly elusive. In effect, council HR departments perpetuate a cycle of mediocrity by hiring those who mimic existing behaviors rather than challenge them. Additionally, councils have shown a marked tendency to prioritize qualifications and compliance training over genuine ability. As a result, someone with a master's degree in public administration and multiple diversity certifications may be favored over an experienced manager from the private sector who has a proven record of turning around failing operations. This trend is partly cultural, an aversion to private sector practices rooted in suspicion, and partly institutional, as regulations and civil service codes discourage anything that resembles risk or change. The result is a workforce that is safe, compliant, and ultimately underwhelming. Talented professionals are deterred from applying, and those within the system learn quickly that success lies in conformity, not excellence. A culture of entitlement and unaccountability. Alongside flawed recruitment lies a broader cultural malaise. Local government culture often discourages initiative and punishes dissent. It is risk-averse, protectionist, and hierarchical. Staff are rarely held accountable for failure, and whistleblowers, both internal and external, often find themselves ignored or even punished. This fosters a culture in which doing the bare minimum becomes the norm. As long as boxes are ticked, documents filed, and targets vaguely acknowledged, there is little incentive to go beyond. Managers are rarely challenged, performance reviews are perfunctory, and the public are seen more as an irritant than a constituency to be served. In some boroughs, local councillors, elected representatives, lack the skills, energy, or authority to effectively hold officers to account. Officers, in turn, manipulate process and protocol to avoid scrutiny, using opaque terminology, endless consultations, and drawn-out decision cycles to bury responsibility. Furthermore, many councils have adopted an unhealthy obsession with ideological pet projects. Instead of focusing on street lighting or housing maintenance, time and money is spent producing reports on how to make the council anti-racist, decolonized, or net zero by 2030, often without a clear plan or tangible benefit to residents. These projects employ swathes of staff whose job descriptions are nebulous and whose impact is unmeasurable. They serve as employment vehicles rather than service enhancements. Financial mismanagement and the displacement of priorities. Financial mismanagement is rife across local authorities. Over the past decade, several councils, including Croydon, Northamptonshire, and Woking, have made headlines for effectively declaring bankruptcy. These crises often follow years of reckless investment in commercial property schemes, vanity projects, or the bloating of internal functions. While it is true that austerity measures imposed by central government have made council budgeting more difficult, this does not excuse poor decision-making. The instinct in many councils has been to protect internal structures and jobs at all costs, slashing frontline services instead. For instance, councils will retain multiple assistant director posts on six-figure salaries while simultaneously cutting funding for youth clubs, public toilets, or road repairs. The result is a civic infrastructure that looks abandoned while council buildings are filled with well-compensated managers creating strategies no one reads. Residents are right to ask, who are councils really serving? Public money should be spent to improve the community, not to fund an ever-expanding cadre of unproductive administrators. Proposed solutions: restoring local government to its purpose. Solving this crisis will require fundamental reform. Tinkering at the edges will not suffice. The following recommendations offer a blueprint for realigning councils with their original mission, serving the public effectively and efficiently. 1. Comprehensive audits and staff reviews. All councils should be subject to mandatory, external audits every 5 years, focused not just on financial health but on staffing efficiency. These reviews must identify redundant roles, duplicated functions, and poor-performing staff. Councils must then be legally required to act on these findings. Additionally, job roles across all departments should be reviewed to ensure they are outcome-driven rather than process-obsessed. Any position that cannot clearly demonstrate public value should be eliminated or restructured. Such audits must be genuinely independent, with powers to recommend disciplinary action or structural change. Auditors should be granted full access to internal documentation and staff interviews. The findings should be made publicly available to ensure transparency. 2. Merit-based recruitment and greater private sector integration. A national recruitment standard should be introduced for local government roles, ensuring positions are widely advertised and open to candidates from all sectors. Private sector experience should be actively encouraged, and councils should be required to include at least one private sector representative on senior appointment panels. Furthermore, a fast-track local government program should be introduced to attract talented graduates and mid-career professionals from outside the public sector. These individuals should be given meaningful roles and expected to deliver results. Incentives should be provided to councils that meet diversity of experience criteria, not merely demographic diversity, but diversity of background, thought, and sectoral expertise. A competitive environment will raise overall performance. 3. Performance-based pay and contractual accountability. Council staff, especially those in management roles, should be placed on performance-based pay structures. Bonuses or incremental pay rises must be tied to measurable outcomes, such as service delivery metrics, user satisfaction, and budget compliance. Those who repeatedly fail should face consequences. Currently, dismissal is rare even in cases of gross incompetence. Reforming employment protection rules within local government, while maintaining basic rights, is essential to weeding out poor performers. Performance contracts should be standard for all senior roles, reviewed annually by an independent panel including external community stakeholders. 4. Reducing bureaucracy and abolishing ideological vanity projects. Central government must issue strict guidelines on the scope of council operations. Councils must be prevented from spending public money on ideological pet projects or hiring staff for roles that do not relate directly to core services. Departments that exist solely to generate reports or manage diversity initiatives, with no direct impact on service users, should be defunded. This will not only save money but refocus councils on what residents actually care about: clean streets, good schools, safe roads, and affordable housing. The guiding principle should be, if a role does not clearly benefit the local taxpayer, it should not be funded by them. 5. Strengthening councillor authority and public scrutiny. Local councillors must be empowered with greater oversight powers and access to independent support staff. Too often, elected officials are stonewalled by permanent officers who exploit procedural technicalities to evade accountability. In addition, a national platform should be created where residents can rate council departments, submit complaints, and flag mismanagement. This platform should feed directly into performance reviews and audit cycles. By returning real power to elected representatives and increasing public transparency, local government can begin to rebuild trust. 6. Encouraging shared services and council consolidation. Many inefficiencies stem from the duplication of services across neighboring councils. For example, two adjacent boroughs may each maintain separate legal departments, procurement teams, and IT services. Consolidating these functions across broader geographic areas can yield economies of scale, reduce costs, and improve consistency. Government incentives should be offered to councils that agree to such mergers. Shared services arrangements should be actively encouraged, with central government acting as a facilitator and guarantor. Lessons should be drawn from successful regional collaborations. 7. Reintroducing civic pride and service ethos. Lastly, there needs to be a cultural shift. Local government should once again be seen as a vocation, a place for capable, motivated people to make a difference in their communities. This can be fostered by celebrating high-performing councils, publicly recognizing exceptional staff, and embedding service ethos training into onboarding. Staff must be reminded that they are there to serve, not to hide behind procedure or push political agendas. Rebuilding pride in public service will take time, but it is vital. National awards, leadership exchanges, and inter-council competitions could all play a role in re-energizing local governance and making it once again a force for civic good. Conclusion. The charge that British county and borough councils have become job creation schemes for the unemployable, work-shy, and incompetent is, sadly, not without basis. Years of complacency, poor recruitment, lack of accountability, and mission drift have hollowed out many local authorities. The cost is not merely financial, but social: deteriorating services, frustrated residents, and a loss of faith in democratic local governance. Yet there is a path forward. Through meaningful reform, in staffing, culture, finance, and structure, councils can be restored to their proper function, responsive, effective engines of local democracy and service. It will take courage, political will, and public pressure, but the prize is worth it: a local government that works, not for itself, but for the people it was created to serve.